let's talk about something we're all after: balance. But we're not just talking about your work-life balance or fitting in a yoga class. We're going to go a lot deeper. We're exploring what it really means to find that balance at our very core by reconnecting with our inner selves. So let's jump right in with a big idea. We all want balance, right? But what if I told you that the way we've been trying to find it is, well, just fundamentally wrong? What if the real source of our balance and the real solution to our imbalance is hiding in a place we almost never think to look? That's the big question we're digging into today. And, it's funny. We know what balance feels like deep down. We see it in a beautiful painting, we taste it in a healthy meal, we hear it in calming music. When things are in balance, they just feel right. They feel harmonious. And that's exactly why the feeling of imbalance, that sense that things are just out of whack, is so unsettling. Okay, so what happens when we get that unsettling, out of whack feeling? Our first reaction is almost always to fix it. But that's exactly where we run into our first huge problem, what we can call the symptom-fixing trap. Think about it. Our instinct is to attack whatever part of the problem is screaming the loudest. When an imbalance shows up as an illness, we treat the illness. When it's a social crisis, we rush to pass a new law. We're essentially just putting a bandage on a deep wound without ever stopping to ask, hey, how did we get this wound in the first place? And this is where things get really dangerous, because this approach often has unintended consequences. Take a personal imbalance like obesity. The source we're looking at points out that in our rush for a cure, we might try things that actually end up harming our organs, creating a totally new problem because we never dealt with the root cause, like our dietary habits. And it's not just about us as individuals, right? This exact same pattern plays out on a huge societal scale. You see an issue like illegal drug use, the symptom-focused fix, stricter laws. But the consequence, as the source notes, can be the criminalization of a huge part of society, which then creates a whole new set of crises. Once again, we're just chasing symptoms. So this all leads us to the central argument from our source material today. A true cure has nothing to do with tackling the symptoms. It's about making a huge shift in our focus to identifying and addressing the root imbalance that's actually causing all these behavioral changes to begin with. So if the real work is all about addressing that root imbalance, where do we even start looking? Well, this is where things get a lot deeper and a lot more personal. We have to talk about psychological trauma, which is maybe one of the most profound imbalances a person can experience. The source here gives us a really specific way to think about trauma. It's not just a bad thing that happened. It's a persistent imbalance in our psyche or our mental state. It's something that often gets pushed down, buried deep in our subconscious, but it continues to pull the strings, affecting how we act and feel today. Now, modern therapy is getting so much better at recognizing trauma as a root cause, which is a massive step forward. But the source suggests that even here, the focus can accidentally stay on the symptoms, things like reframing negative thoughts or learning coping skills. And while those things are incredibly helpful, they're mainly managing the effects of the trauma, not the trauma itself. And here's the thing. By focusing only on managing the symptoms, we fail to answer the one huge, fundamental question that everyone who's been through trauma asks, whether they say it out loud or not. Why me? That question just echoes, and without a real answer, it's almost impossible to find true, lasting peace. So, if the answer isn't out here with the symptoms, where is it? Well, the source suggests it's buried deep inside us, in our subconscious, in what some people call the inner child. The next big question is, how do we get there safely? You've probably heard this term before, the inner child. The idea here is that it's the part of us, our spirit, our soul, that holds on to those original memories, the memory of what actually created the imbalance in the first place. The goal is to access this part of ourselves to finally understand what really happened and why. But, and this is a huge but, how we try to access that inner self is absolutely critical. The source presents a very stark choice between two paths. On one hand, there's the dangerous path, which uses methods like hypnosis. The warning here is severe. This can actually constrain what the source calls the spirit's self-expression and even create a spiritual debt, kind of like a karmic consequence. On the other hand, there's the safe path of deep self-reflection, which leads to genuine connection and understanding without any of those risks. So given that pretty clear choice, let's focus on what the source says is the true path inward. This is a journey that really demands a very specific mindset and a serious commitment to taking responsibility for yourself. This safe path is laid out as a three-part journey. It all begins with accepting a premise about life that can be, well, pretty tough to swallow. From there, you use tools like prayer or meditation for that deep inner reflection. And the final step is to actually connect with your inner self to find the true cause of the imbalance. So, what is this difficult premise? Okay, here it is. According to the framework in our source, the very first step is to accept that there is no true injustice in life and that both the cause of your situation and the solution for it are already inside of you. Now, the source acknowledges this is a challenging, maybe even controversial idea, but it's presented as the absolute, non-negotiable starting point for this particular path of self-discovery. To make this a little more concrete, the source brings back that example of the hypnotist from The Dangerous Path. According to the spiritual law of karma that's described here, that same hypnotist might later in life face challenges that feel strangely similar to what they put their client through. The point isn't punishment. The point is that it's an opportunity for them to finally recognize their own inner tendency to impose their will on others, the real root of their own imbalance. And this comes with a really, really important warning. This framework is not a tool for judgment. We can't look at someone else's struggle and think we know what's going on inside them. The source is very clear that totally different inner imbalances can show up as very similar external symptoms. So trying to diagnose others or even ourselves would be a huge mistake. So when you boil it all down, what's the real message here? It's about always looking beyond the external symptoms. The path to your inner self, through honest reflection and meditation, isn't about finding a quick and easy answer. It's about connecting with a deeper part of yourself and finally beginning to truly sense the real nature of the imbalance that lies within. Which brings us to our final thought. This whole journey is based on the idea that the answers we're all so desperately looking for out there are actually waiting for us right here, on the inside. So the real question we're left with is, what's stopping us from finally getting quiet enough to listen?